I was 18 at the time. One evening, me and my two friends, Mike and Paul, decided to go camping. Well, camping maybe isn't the right word, since we didn't intend to spend the night, only to chill and have some fun around the campfire for a while. The plan was simple. Head out, build a campfire, drink a few bottles of wine, eat something, and head back home for a good night's sleep. We met at my house when it was still sunny outside. We got ready and we headed out. Our destination was an old abandoned quarry in the middle of the woods, which was maybe 40 minutes away from my house. Even though the quarry has a tragic and frankly creepy history, it's a popular place for such occasions. When we got there, the sky was already colored red as the sun slowly sank behind the hills. We quickly gathered all the firewood that we could, so we wouldn't have to look for it later. As the darkness fell and absorbed all of our surroundings into impenetrable blackness, we had already managed to get the fire going. We were in a great mood and we were getting ready for our first toast. And that's when we realized that we had made a horrible mistake. We forgot the corkscrew. We were trying to open the wine without it, but we quickly gave up, because the bottles were quite expensive, and we didn't want to damage them. At this point, it was clear that one of us would have to sacrifice themselves and jog back to retrieve the corkscrew. After a bit of haggling, I volunteered. However, I had two conditions. Firstly, they would give me a hatchet in case something went wrong along the way. And secondly, no pranks when I got back. Mike and Paul agreed without hesitation. They shoved a hatchet into my one hand and a flashlight to the other, and sent me on my way. As I was jogging through the forest, I heard a noise resembling a wild boar. Suddenly, I remembered a warning I received from an older hunter a few days ago. He said that this time of year, boars were getting dangerous, especially at night. I was a bit nervous, but luckily, I managed to survive with no harm. I arrived safely to my house, much to my surprise of my mom, who didn't expect me back so early. I explained the whole deal, which she just laughed. I grabbed the corkscrew and was back on my way. Not wanting to experience an unpleasant boar encounter, I chose another, slightly longer path, this time through an open field. After a while, I got to our spot. It was a small clearing, surrounded on one side by massive rocks, maybe 70 meters tall, and on the other side by thick forest. Somewhere in the middle of the clearing was our campfire. When I approached it, I realized that there wasn't anybody, although our backpacks were still on the ground and the fire was burning bright. Great. We specifically agreed that there would be no pranks when I got back. Those guys think that they're funny, I thought to myself. I resignedly sat down near the fire while facing the woods. That's the only place where those two guys could have hidden, I thought. I was really tired and all I could think about was the taste of that exquisite Pinot Noir we had brought with us. I really wasn't in the mood for their games and I was getting quite mad. And that's when I heard a snapping of twigs and rustling of leaves from the edge of the forest, maybe 30 meters from where I was sitting. The sound was rhythmical and it was undoubtedly the sound of somebody walking. I aimed my flashlight to the spot where sounds were coming from. Between the trees, I spotted a tall person wearing a dark hoodie. As I shined my flashlight on him, he stopped walking, turned to me and just kept staring motionlessly. Even though he was directly facing me, I couldn't really see his face. I shouted, "Paul, you fatso! I know you're trying to scare me. We agreed on something, so stop messing around and come out." As I finished, the hooded figure just turned around and walked deeper into the woods. Exactly at that time, my phone started ringing. Hastily, I took it out of my pocket. It was Mike. I took the call and started barking at him. "Really funny, guys. I thought we agreed on something." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about you trying to mess with me. I clearly saw you, and now you can come out." Mike, as if frozen for a minute, for what seemed like an eternity, All I could hear was his heavy breathing and Paul mumbling something in the background. When he finally snapped back to reality, he just said, "Dude, we're at your house. We heard some footsteps and at first we thought you were just trying to mess with us. But then we got scared and decided to look after you. I forgot the phone at your house, so we couldn't even give you a call. Just get the heck out of there and we'll come back for our stuff together." BS. That's just another one of your funny pranks and I'm not buying it. Hold on a second. For a while, all I could hear was some incoherent mumbling. "Hey, what's going on?" asked the voice of my mom coming from the phone. My head suddenly spun and my heart skipped a beat as I realized that they weren't kidding. Suddenly, a freezing wave of fear ran through my body. However, I managed to convince Mom that everything was just fine, and that she didn't need to worry. She gave the phone back to Mike. "Just leave everything and come back. We're heading out now. We'll meet you halfway there." "I'm not going anywhere alone again. You better get your butts here and do it quick. I'm waiting for you." "But..." I hung up. I didn't wish to make any more noise than I already did. I quickly turned off my flashlight and started to back off from the light of the fire. I moved all the way to the huge wall of rocks. I figured that if I had my bag covered by the rocks, I could eliminate one of the possible ways that unwanted visitors could approach me. I was standing there in a complete darkness, trying not to make a sound while tightly clutching my hatchet, which would be for the next half an hour my best friend. I had to constantly convince myself not to curl into a ball in fear. Even my own body started to betray me. As my hearing got worse due to my savagely beating heart, I was trying to calm myself. But then again, in worst case scenario, every little bit of adrenaline would help. After what seemed like an eternity, I spotted 2 weak light beams coming from the forest. I heard Paul shout my name. I'd never been so relieved. I finally ran out from my hiding to greet my 2 friends. For quite some time, we were just standing there, laughing like maniacs from relief. We were even getting a bit cocky, and we thought about staying. After all, there was just one supposedly creep lurking between the trees, and there were 3 of us. It's funny. Just minutes earlier, I was crapping myself with fear, and now I was suddenly full of tough macho thinking. What could possibly happen? In the end, healthy judgments got the better of us and we decided to leave. We packed our things, put out the fire and got out. We took our bottles of wine to enjoy somewhere else. Somewhere where it's nice and brightly lit. So, about 2 years ago, a friend of mine had moved into his own apartment. The sofa that was in it was old and worn, so he decided that he would try and find another one in better condition. He asked me to help him look for one as my dad had a van, and we would need to use that to transport the sofa. So we went on Craigslist to have a look at what other people had for sale. We came across one ad that stated, a 3-seater cream leather sofa, great condition, free to first viewer. There is a picture of it and it looked in perfect condition. Now the ads had been up for a week, so we had thought that maybe it was already gone, and that they just hadn't taken the ad down yet. So my friend contacted the seller and nearly instantly got a reply saying that they still had the sofa and it was available if we would like to collect it. I was a bit weary that it was still available. I mean, a free sofa in perfect condition that had been up for a week and nobody has taken it yet. We thought that maybe there was something wrong with it that could only be noticed when viewing the sofa, that was maybe hidden from the pictures. It was a weekend and we had no plans, so we decided that we could go and check out the sofa. My friend contacted the seller back and organized a time and a place to meet up. They decided on a local McDonald's car park at 9 p.m. as the seller said that he was in work until 8 and would need time to get ready after work. The seller said that he would be driving a green Honda Accord with a trailer. So we pulled up to the McDonald's car park at about 8:50 p.m. There were loads of people around, so we had no reason to think that we would be in danger or anything. At 8:55, my friend got a text saying that the seller was about 15 minutes away, and they asked him to describe what vehicle we were in, so he described the van that we were in to him. About 5 minutes after he had texted the seller what vehicle we were in, an overweight man around 50 years old with a gray scruffy beard and greasy gray hair approached the driver's side window of the van, which was my side, as I was driving the van. He was wearing a plain white t-shirt with looked like food stains all over it, with black jeans with holes torn in them, and dried mud stains all over them, along with a pair of black steel toe-cap boots also covered in dry mud. He knocked on my window, so I rolled it down a bit. "You boys here for the sofa?" he said in a gravelly voice. It sounded like he needed to cough, but he couldn't get it out. Yeah," I said to him. "Rob's car broke down just on the road and his phone battery died. I was with him, so I walked up to get you guys. He was with the car waiting for AA, but you can come down and collect the sofa off of him." Me and my friend looked at each other, unsure of what to think. "Can I get in the van and we'll go back to Rob together?" the guy asked. "How far down the road is he?" I asked before he replied. "Not too far, but I need to show you where to go." At this stage, my friend pretended to get a phone call. "Hello?" "Yes, no way, really. We'll be right there," he said before pretending to hang up his phone. He looked at me and said, "Hey man, we gotta go. My dad needs us to help him with his flat tire." I nodded, knowing that it was a fake call for us to get the hell away from this creepy guy. "Hey, we gotta go now, but we'll contact you tomorrow about the sofa." The guy just stared at us as I rolled up my window and started to drive away. Me and my friend looked at each other. Well, that was creepy. I got bad vibes off of that guy, my friend said. "Definitely," I replied to him. We decided to drive around the back of the car park to see if we could find out if the guy was up to something or not. And we could see him standing in the same spot where we left him, and he was on the phone. He put his phone down, and about 2 minutes after that, a car pulled up with 3 men in it and he got in. My friend's phone started ringing, and it was the number of Rob, the guy who supposedly was giving away the sofa. He answered. "Hey, can you meet tomorrow and I can hold onto the sofa for you until then?" As he was on the phone, I noticed one of the men in the car that had collected the creepy guy was also on the phone. My friend told Rob that he would contact him tomorrow, that he was busy and he couldn't talk right now. At the same time that my friend hung up on the phone, the guy who was in the car also finished his phone call. At this point, I explained that to my friend that there was probably no car that had broken down, and the creepy guy was trying to lure us somewhere so as the guys in the car could do God knows what to us. We drove home and my friend blocked the number of Rob, and we've never heard from them again. We reported the ad and it was removed the next day. I have a couple memories of being abroad at various times that I didn't think about it at the time that could have gone bad, but didn't turn out that way. I'm currently 25, but when I was newly 16 in 2011, I went to China on a 10-day trip for high school students sponsored by a local Midwestern university. On one occasion, we were in a large market on the basement level of a shopping center in Beijing. I can't remember exactly where. We were supposed to be using the buddy system, and I was buddies with a boy that I had stayed friends with over the years. While looking around the large market, we got separated for a few minutes visiting different stalls, but I just assumed my friend was close by and could see me. I walked into a shop stall by myself to look at some of those tacky souvenir canvas bags that you can find in any major city. I browsed for a couple minutes, not paying attention to the fact that I was the only one in the stall when a small, middle-aged Chinese woman came up to me and grabbed me tightly around the arm. In broken English, she told me that she had more purses and bags in her secret shop, and started pulling me towards the back of the store. Taken aback, I said I didn't want to look. In front of me, a man was pushing open a door at the back of the wall that had bags hanging all over it that would have appeared to be part of the display. I just remember being incredibly confused and hesitant. She was holding onto my arm so tight that it hurt, while pulling me forward, and I just remember in that moment looking around quickly. And then I see my 6'2" tall male friend running over. He came and grabbed my other arm, and when she saw him, she immediately let go, walked off, and the man shut the door. I don't know what exactly was going on, but I do know that I was very young and naive at the time, and that I am very fortunate to have had a watchful friend. When I was 20, I spent a semester abroad in Copenhagen as well. I lived in a house in a suburb just north of the city, and I had spent the evening having some drinks with friends in the city center. I was the only friend who lived in that direction, so I got in the S train by myself. I did this every day to get to and from class, and to go home. A male friend offered to go with me, but I didn't want to inconvenience him with an extra trip, so I declined. The train ride was 20 to 30 minutes, and at the second stop, a dark-haired, middle-aged man sat down across from me. Even though I had been drinking, I wasn't drunk, and by this point in my life, I had learned to be a little more careful of my surroundings. I busied myself with my phone, and he asked me how I was in Danish. Many people assumed I was because I am pale and blonde. My barely passable Danish was even worse if I had had any alcohol, so I apologized and said that I only spoke English. He said that he was Spanish and he didn't speak much English himself. I just smiled and nodded, hoping that he would understand that we couldn't talk. However, he kept trying to ask me questions though. I decided to be polite and asked him how he was doing in my incredibly poor Spanish. He took this as an invitation to ask more questions, and I could barely understand a thing. He was visibly frustrated I couldn't converse with him, and then tried to ask if I was with friends or if I was from here. Subtle red flags. I thought about getting off the train early, but I didn't want to get lost. I had only been here a few weeks at this point. 10 minutes later, I got to my stop and I got off the train. I very much noticed that he also got off the train just before the door closed. Usually, I walked home. It was a 15-minute walk from the station to my house, and on normal days, it was a pleasant walk through a residential neighborhood. He followed me through the tunnel under the tracks to the other side, and luckily, a city bus was outside the station. I immediately got on, showed the driver my pass, and sat right behind him. It was late at night and I was the only one on the bus. This driver must have been perceptive and understood something was amiss, because he looked at me and asked in English, not Danish, where my stop was. I told him and he closed the door right after. As the bus pulled away, I saw the Spanish man standing outside of the station, staring at me through the windows. He turned away and walked back through the tunnel under the station towards the platform. Both experiences were a combination of good timing and understanding people, but it is frustrating to think that I should have had the help of a male friend in these scenarios. The world isn't always a friendly place. Both of my stories happened in the summer of 2018, when I was working as a facilitator in a recreation center for children, small sections up to first grade. We were in a kind of park about 20 minutes away by bus where we stayed all day, before going back to school at about 5 p.m. so that the parents could pick up the children. This park was reserved for us and therefore nobody else than us. Our managers and those who take care of the canteen are not supposed to be there, especially since around it there are only fields, a forest, and a building site, but it was quite far. Now that the context has been set, I'll begin the first story that happened to my colleague. We had walkie-talkies for the day, which allowed for us to reach our managers, the secretary, or the infirmary in case of a problem, but they were returned when it was time to leave to be recharged during the night. So, it was up to the secretary, my colleague, who was the last one to leave at around 7 p.m., to put them on the charger and then close the shutters and doors and go home. One morning, I think it was the 8th day, I had been working for a month with the children. We all find ourselves summoned one by one to the office of our leaders, so I go there without really understanding what is going on. I pass in front of the secretary who doesn't look serene at all, and that worries me a bit. My senior manager asked me if I had returned my walkie the day before, or if I knew someone who had taken one. I say that I did return mine by pointing it at the charging station, and explain that I didn't hear anything else. I still asked why I'm being asked this question, and then my manager tells me. The night before at around 7 p.m., as she was about to leave, my colleague was closing the shutters when one of the walkie-talkies lit up, and a male's voice came out saying, "May beauty of the Isles, you're beautiful when you close those shutters." I had a vile shiver go down my spine, my colleague being the only foreigner on the team. The person who had spoke to her had to be looking at her and really talking to her and not a hoax. At the time, she had called her roommate who had come to pick her up and left every other day with someone, and we never heard from that guy again. Nevertheless, we patrolled for several days to try to notice someone, for our safety but especially for the children's safety. The second story takes place in the third and thus the penultimate week of work. It is around 11 a.m. when I am called on the talkie by my manager. She tells me that something very strange has happened. I ask her what it is, and again I could feel this shiver of anguish. A man had come to the secretary and asked to see me using my first and last name. My manager had gone to see me because she thought it was strange, because nobody is supposed to show up at my workplace, and apart from my parents and friends, nobody knew I was there. This man had then introduced himself as my uncle, and that he had come to pick me up for personal reasons. My manager said that I was not on site. That wasn't true, and that she would let me know that he had come by. According to her, he looked very annoyed and left without giving his name. You could say it was a plausible story, but I only have one uncle who was my godfather, who doesn't fit the description of the man who came in, and to whom I don't talk at all. I never heard from this man again, and I've never seen him, but I still have this bad feeling that someone I don't know forged an identity to come and get me. Who knows what would have happened if I had gone. I am grateful to my manager who knew how to smell the trouble.